Hello, 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 lovely lady. Mama, welcome to another episode of Holy, Healthy, Happy Mama. That's right. Here you're going to get the trifecta that is motherhood. We're going to focus on all things holy, healthy, and ultimately with those two together, I believe that you can declare you'll have a happy motherhood. And today I have a woman who embodies all those things here together, my California dream girl. I am so excited to welcome her to the show today. We have Miss Nissa Andrews. She is a mom of four, a published author, and just a true dynamo in the kingdom of God. And I am so happy that you guys are going to hear from her and learn from her and grow with her today. So without further ado, Mrs. Nissa Andrews, I just want to say, girl, thank you so much for taking time out and joining us today.
Yay, I am so honored to be here. And with an introduction like that, I'm like, wow, I have to step it up. No, I'm just kidding. No,
Okay.
I'm so excited to be here. And I just love what you're doing and your heart for women. And I just felt compelled to be a part of this. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. And that means so much to me because I'm fangirling over here. I am such a big fan of yours. And ladies listening, you'll find out very soon. As I said, she's a published author and we'll be speaking over the book wrote. I actually happen to have my copy right here, nice and close. I'll have to eventually ask you for an autograph copy, maybe. But as I said in the beginning of the episode, before we launch into this beautiful topic that you've written about, I think every mom loves to talk just a little bit about her family, right? So I said you have four.
Yes.
I would love to hear just a little bit about your family and your beautiful children.
Yes. So I have been married to my amazing husband, Ryan. We've been married for 20 years now. So that's amazing. We're
You look
loving.
amazing.
Thank you. It's amazing. I'm like, wow, how did we get to, it feels like we just met, but we've been together forever. So it's like you feel the history and it's amazing. And marriage is a big part of what we love too. We have marriage groups and all that. We really love to sow into marriage because I believe that raising healthy families starts with having a strong marriage, having that connection. And so, it's marriage, there's valleys, there's highs, there's all of it, but being able to love each other through all of it is so important. So he's my guy. We've been together for a long time and it's just beautiful. So we have four children together. My oldest is 16 and then my youngest is 8, and it's just so fun. So I have it goes boy, girl, boy, boy. So I have one daughter in the mix. So she's our little princess in there, our queen, we call her. So surrounded by a lot of testosterone. We have a lot of testosterone in this house.
But even though your babies, your youngest is now 8, I know that childbirth has been such a strong topic in your life. And as I've brought up several times already, without further ado, if you're watching the live video, you'll see her book in my hand. I have to say, this is like the cutest pregnant woman I've ever seen. Do you like on the book cover? Do you know who this is? Like, is it
I have no idea. It's just like a stock photo that we were able to buy and use for whatever. But I'm like, she's so adorable. I want her on my book.
Is like, ladies, if the curiosity has perked your interest, like this woman is like, when I saw the title of your book, which is Pain-Free Childbirth, Every Woman's Blessing, Jesus, I saw this woman and I was like, that's the kind of pregnancy I want. Like, she just looks so joyful, so open, so free. And I think when people hear this declaration, like pain-free childbirth, it definitely makes heads swivel. Like, I've talked about it on my social already. I've brought it up in family conversations and people are like, come again? Like, wait, what? Pain-free? Did you miss a word or leave one out? Uh, of course, I feel like we have to dive in right there, Nissa. Like, I
Yeah.
love the book. So I'm just curious if you would share with us what the heck that means, and also like what brought you to write a book like that with that title.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was a journey for me too. It's honestly, my story started with when it comes to pregnancy and childbirth, it I was dealing with infertility. So my husband and I were married, and there was a while before we had our first child, because I was like, right away, I'm like, let's have a baby. I wanted to be a mom right away. And so we struggled. And so during that time, it was just praying, wanting to conceive, wanting children. I come from big families. So I'm one of 6 children. My mom's like one of 10 children. It's like big families is a fun, big thing. And so now here, not being able to have children, I felt a lot of shame, honestly, because I was like, wow, here I come from, children are such a blessing through our family line. It's looked at in such a beautiful light. And now I'm struggling to have children. So there was a lot of, interestingly enough, there was a lot of pain and shame in that area. And so God began to speak to my heart. And I write about a lot of this in my books. I won't go into too much detail, but so God began to release promises. He began to speak things over me. And he used to said, you know, you will have children. And I began to try to renew my mind, because in the natural, I was seeing, this is painful, this is hard, this is not easy. I was crying. It was, and I know there's other women who can relate to that. It was like, it wasn't necessarily easy for me in that moment of time, but God began to speak to me and say, look, it doesn't have to be this way, and I have something great for you. And so I had to learn how to receive that, how to walk that out. And so I explained that in my book, but it was just so eye-opening. God began to speak to me. He's like, not only are you going to have children, but you're going to have children without pain. You're not going to have morning sickness. You're not going to have complications. And I just thought, whoa, okay, right now I'm just asking for children.
Right.
I'm like, just you telling me I'm going to have a child is like music to my ears. But God is just so great. He takes us, he goes exceedingly abundantly more than we ask or think or imagine, right? And I feel like that's what he put in me in that moment. It was like, look, I know you're just trying to imagine having children, but I have so much more for you, and there's so much greater for you. And I want you to go even to grab a hold of all that I have for you. And it was mind blowing. I remember, just like everybody, like you said, when you say pain-free childbirth, people are like mind blown, right? Like, what are you talking about? And that was me. I was like, this is crazy. I've never heard of such a thing. But God, I feel like you're speaking this to me. So I know that you can do anything. So I began to just go, well, how do I prepare my heart? Well, God, how do I step into what you're speaking over me? And then the journey kind of began from there. And of course, you guys know I have 4 children now. So I did get pregnant and I had children, and all my births were exactly how God said. I mean, my first birth went so well that I ended up having him surprise at home, which wasn't planned. And so it was like, oh my gosh, I'm already ready to have him. And we're not going to make it to the birthing center, because I was planning on having him at a birthing center. And so then we just birthed him at home. And then I had home births with the rest of my babies. So it just was, and especially, I think the world puts so much, society puts so much on us. They tell us what it's supposed to look like. And even as a first-time mom, they're like, as a first-time mom, it's a really long labor and it's hard, and all these expectations they put on you, just even in motherhood and all of it. There's so much expectation and stuff that's just like put on us that isn't necessarily the way that it needs to be, or what God says it's supposed to be for us. And so God just began to just reveal so many things to me, just like, hey, my yoke is easy, my burden is light. Like, none of this stuff. Birth was a blessing from God. He created it. He wants us to be fruitful and to multiply. And if his yoke is easy and his burden is light, then the yoke of motherhood, the yoke of birth, the yoke of all these things that he blessed us with, that he gave us, should feel that way. It shouldn't be a burden. And so there's so much. God just began to shift in my spirit, and I began to just to learn and grow. And there was so much healing I needed to do too. So there was, which I talk about in my book, and there was so much internal healing I needed to do to begin to just grab a hold of the greatness of what God was speaking over me. So
that is just, it's an absolutely incredible story in general, just especially because I love the very first point that you made was like, whoa, God, I'm just praying for a baby. Like, I'm sure at that point, because I know, because I would have felt this way too. Like, I would have been like, no, God, like, I will take the pain and the morning sickness. And because last year, like, I
right.
experienced a miscarriage. So I was like,
Yeah.
Lord, bless my womb again. I don't care how bad the pregnancy is. I would really
Want a
love
baby.
to, I want a baby, right? So I love
Yeah.
that, like, hey, your expectations are here, but like mine are even greater for you. Like, I have something even greater. And what you reminded me of, so many of us women, we believe these lies about so much, like you said, definitely just, I think, motherhood in general, marriage in general, in our modern society, but especially about childbirth. And I can imagine it had to be challenging for you at times when you had maybe your own fears, your own struggles in
Yeah.
society, supporting a completely different image than what God was sharing. Because I know that happens so much in our walk with God, is that there are so many things where his truth and word is contrary to what we can see with our own eyes and in what we
Right.
flesh. And so I'm curious, like, maybe whether it's your own experience or from moms you've talked about now, hard maybe to label, but what would you say is one of the biggest lies that you feel women believe about childbirth?
I think a big thing is women believe they're not powerful.
Mm,
They believe that they lack something. And
yes.
so I think that's, I mean, I that was one of, I think, the biggest things for me. I didn't realize I was a powerful woman. I didn't realize I was capable, that I had what it takes
Mm,
to do it. And so I believe that those are lies that we believe. And so we, like for myself, I walked a little bit in a victim mentality. I walked a little bit in,
mm,
instead of feeling like a powerful woman, I felt more like under everything, and it's more like a victim. And so, and I think those, it's a belief system that we have within ourselves, whether it comes from trauma. I mean, it can come from so many things. Um, just how we were raised, or what's been spoken over us over so much time, or just traumas, that things that happen in life. And so we take on this belief system that we're not powerful, that we're, maybe our voice doesn't matter. Those were some of the big things that I believed. And as I work with a lot of births, and I'm a doula, I realize that's a common theme. I think that women, a lot of times, they just feel like, they're not powerful. There's some kind of a lack there. And then that
yes.
leads to fear, because then you feel that, hey, if I believe that, it leads to fear. Well, then I don't have what it takes. I'm not powerful enough to do the job of birth without having something to help me, something I need to cope through it. I need to somehow it becomes a survival mechanism. But that happens when you feel like you're not powerful, that you're not victorious. If you feel like you're not going to be victorious, you run from it, you flee, there's that fight or flight that happens, that fear happens. So when we feel that we're a victorious, powerful woman, which God created us to be powerful women, men and women together to be fruitful, multiply, to take dominion. I mean, it takes us believing that we're powerful people, and we have the power of God within us. And so when we realize the power that we have, the authority that we carry, things really shift. And so it's a mindset thing a lot of times, where we have to come out of that powerlessness and
Mhm.
step into just being a powerful woman. And what does that look like? And that comes through our identity in Christ. When we realize who we are in Christ,
Mm,
it shifts everything, because that's where the power comes from. That's where, we get endued with power, through the Holy Spirit. And so when we can walk in that, and then we have that authority, um, then no matter what we face, we can speak peace to those storms, right? And we can take authority over those things. But it takes us recognizing who we are. Just like the disciples, when they were in the boat with Jesus, they didn't realize it at that time. They didn't realize the power, that the authority that they were given, that they were able to do that.
Right.
And so I think that's the same thing. A lot of times women don't realize who they are yet necessarily in the spirit. And so that's what we have to begin to uncover and unveil.
Yeah.
That needs to be unveiled within us, in our minds, and just taking that time to renew our minds. And that makes a huge difference.
Wow, you reminded me of the scripture where Jesus declares and says, like, you will do these things and greater than me. And that's hard for my mind to conceive, because you do see these, right? What? Like, Jesus, okay, like you walked on, like, okay, like you fighted the storm, it's like you raised someone from the dead, and for him to declare that, it's like, it is amazing truth that I've never thought of before in speaking over and believing over when it comes to my motherhood and my labor. And so I just had a major light bulb go off, and ladies that are listening, especially if you're pregnant, if you have that desire to be pregnant, or if you know someone who's pregnant, I think if you pause this right now and rewind like the past 5 minutes, I mean, Nissa, I think you gave an amazing testimony to, if a woman wants to have this pain-free childbirth, it's like exactly how she can do it. And of course, you can always go a lot deeper in her book, which we promise to connect you to later and give you the link for that if you want to pick that up. But Nissa, I also want to ask you about, I'm positive, because I also am a home birthing mom. I've had a lot of skeptics in my life. So I'm positive you've had skeptics in your life when you've written a book with this title. So if there's a mom that's listening to this right now and she's a little like, yeah, that sounds all great, but I don't know if that's for me. I don't know if it's possible. Maybe it's, we've got a mom that's a second time mom and she had a traumatic first birth. What would you say to her?
Well, again, anything's possible with God. Anything's possible. And he takes our traumas and he turns them into triumph, like you can go from ashes to beauty. And God always takes our story and he turns it for good. And so there's so many things. And that's why I loved sharing my testimony in the book, because a lot of times people think if I said, hey, I had pain-free childbirth, they think it was just easy all along, that there were no trials along the way. Now, it doesn't mean that you didn't have to face things and heal from things and get to a place. And so anything's possible. God can do it. And I believe my testimony is really lays claim to that, I was like, I don't want women to feel like, hey, it's just something, oh, you just had something special. It's not true. God does not play favorites. He's no respecter of persons. Jesus, what he did was for all of humankind. It's for all women. It's for all men, but when it comes to childbirth, of course, that's for women. And when we, and just going down into just the deep dive, a lot of times people think that God put this on women, that painful childbirth comes from God. And that is so contrary to who God is. He is not the author of pain and destruction. And he's not the one who steals, kills, and destroys. That's the work of the enemy. God brings life. He came to bring life and life abundant. And so a lot of times people look at it, well, it says, I will greatly multiply your sorrow and your conception. But when you really look at the original words, in fact, when it says, I will greatly multiply, that's the same word 2 times in Hebrew. It's rabba. It's the same exact word used when God blessed mankind in the beginning, when he said, be fruitful and multiply. He said, fruitful is another word, but multiply is rabba. So when he says, rabba, your sorrow, your conception, I like the Young's literal translation better, because it says, multiplying, I multiply your sorrow and your conception. So what happened was, when the fall happened, God didn't put the sorrow, he didn't put, those all came through sin. That's what was attached to sin. But now his blessing is still over us. He's still saying, I'm going to multiply you. But now there's sorrow added to it. It was never his intention for it to be sorrowful, for it to have any of these things attached to it. But through the fall, that's what happened. But he's still going to multiply you. His blessing is still over you to do what he wanted us to do from the beginning. And then when it says, in pain, you will bring forth children, it's so amazing because that original word is etzeb, which is, both of these words stem from the root word atzab. Well, pain is a form of it. It's etzeb, and it literally means idol, an earthen vessel. So really the right translation would be that now, as an earthen vessel, you're going to birth your children. Because before we were connected to God, we were a glorified body, right? But now the sin came, we died spiritually, and now you're going to birth your children as an earthen vessel. But the good news is, in the New Testament, it says what's hidden in earthen vessels. It says God's glory is now hidden in earthen vessels. So as new believers, as a new creation, we don't birth just as earthen vessels anymore. We now have the glory of God. Everything changes. And that's why I say that it's every woman's blessing in Jesus, because he redeemed everything. And now we're birthing from a new place. And it just changes everything. So what does that look like? And what can that look like? And so I share my testimonies of my pain-free childbirth to show, hey, if he can do it for one, he will absolutely do it for another. And that's what the Bible's all about. It's like, look, these are God's miracles. This is what he has for you. And that's what we can contend for. That's what we know. We know his heart through the stories of the people, right? How he touched people, how he showed up for people. And we go, wow, that's God's nature. That's his heart for people. And so that was my heart in writing this book too, was showing this is God's heart for you women. If this is what he's showing, what he did for me, he wants to do this across the board. And he's inviting us into this place to receive from him, the beauty of what he has. So.
Well, I am so receiving from you right now. And I'm sure so many women listening are just receiving the words that are coming from the Lord out of your mouth. And I feel like you read my heart, because I was thinking back to that verse. I feel like that is a verse that so many women call back to, right? And it's spoken about, and it's like we cling to that. But I love you shared and educated us on that original Hebrew. And I'm excited to dive deeper into your book on that. Because I do think that it's such an incredible message. It's just something that you've reminded me that we can declare, that we have the authority to declare. Mamas that are listening, that's why it's so important to watch the words that we speak over ourselves. And I also would say, make sure that you're surrounding yourself with a community of especially fellow mamas and people who also speak over you, who are also speaking life over your situations, right? Like women who are going to be champions in your darkest hours, and women who are following the Lord and hear his voice and speak out that truth over you. And if you are looking for such women, well, you know how to find me. I am creating a community like that for women like us. And, Nissa, I have to say that I feel that I could totally do about 10 follow-up episodes with you. You already owe me one when we do our coffee in England. But before I let you go today, I do want to give a chance for any woman who is just totally like me, totally fangirling over you, just as so inspired by your story and your witness. If they would like to, first and foremost, grab your book, and if they would like to go ahead and connect with you online, what's the best way for them to do so?
Yeah, well, my book is on Amazon. So you just search Pain-Free Childbirth by Nissa Andrews, and it'll pop right up. And you can order that online, and it'll be sent right to your house, really easy. And then I am on social media on Instagram. It's just Pain Free Childbirth. You'll see me. And I do have a private group on Facebook as well, Pain Free Childbirth. And that one is a lot of women can start asking questions, and they'll, need help with, birth stuff or anything like that. So it's a good community of asking questions and finding that community of a lot of women who can, just share their stories and everything. So I also do have a website, painfreechildbirth.org, where you can kind of see a lot of the different things that I do. So thank you.
Excellent. No,
Yeah.
thank you. No worries, Mama. If you're in your car or if you're jogging listening to this, I'll have all those links in the show notes below. So have no fear, right? I'm speaking it over you that you are going to have the most amazing pain-free childbirth and motherhood. And it all starts maybe right here listening to this episode. And we're just so blessed that you took the time to listen to this today. May that empower you to know that you are making great decisions by surrounding yourself with other spirit-led women that are speak over you. And I implore you to continue to do so, and reach out to Nissa, reach out to myself, and know that you will find some loving hands and support for you no matter where you're at in this world. And Nissa, I just want to say thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your open heart and your humbleness and your journey. And I know it's one of those, it's like, I know this is not the last, this is not goodbye, but it's a hello, but just thank you so much for offering your time for us today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. Honestly, it's such an honor.
Awesome. Well, thank you, ladies, for listening. And you can catch this episode on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And again, I'll have all those show notes ready for you. We will see you again on another episode of Holy, Healthy, Happy Mama.